Our kids are heading back to school. As we embark on another school year, today we are talking about all the work that goes into making sure that our most precious commodity is safe. Today we'll share with you the steps we take all year long as it relates to school safety and security.
I'm Major C.J. Stantz. Serving as a deputy includes a variety of duties. The job is challenging, always changing, and truly rewarding.
I am Terry Curry, Communications Supervisor. Our dispatchers are the calming voice on the other end of the line during someone's worst moment. We are always there.
I'm Lieutenant Jeff Beck. Being a corrections officer isn't easy. The job is tough and it tests you every day. Every officer that works in our jail is making a difference.
I'm Sheriff George Maier. Learn more on how you can join our team today and be the difference. Welcome to On Our Watch. I'm your Stark County Sheriff, George Maier. School safety has continued to be a priority for my office, and I know other local agencies and organizations throughout Stark County as well. It is an issue that we do not take lightly, and we recognize that our children and their families have the right to know they are safe when they go to school. It is our responsibility to protect the right, and I am proud to welcome two individuals today that I work closely with to uphold that responsibility. Stark County Education Service Center Superintendent and my friend Joe Chaddok, and Stark County Sheriff's Office School Resource Officer, Supervisor, and Master SRO Sergeant Chad Smith. Thank you both for joining me today in our program.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Well, listen, guys, we're going to get right into it today and talk a little bit about school safety. You know, we know that school has just started. All of our schools are back in session, and you know, it's fast and furious. The buses are out on the road, and so most prevalent in our minds today is school safety. So I'm going to start with you, Joe. Can you tell me a little bit about the makeup of the Stark County School District and you know, the area that you cover?
Sure. Thank you, Sheriff. Thanks for having us on today. So Stark County, we serve 17 public school districts in RG Drag Career Technical Center. So of those 17 districts, we serve approximately 54,000 kindergarten through 12th grade public school students in the county and all their families and communities.
That's amazing, and you know, along with that is an awesome responsibility, not only for your primary responsibility, which is to educate our children, but the secondary responsibility is just as important, to keep them safe. You know, I think it goes without saying that parents feel that when their children go to school, they should not have to worry about their safety. And so I know that that's paramount in what you do each and every day, and we appreciate that. Chad, I want to kind of switch it over to you, and I know you've been a school resource officer for many, many years, and you've actually accomplished training to be a master resource officer, and we appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about the makeup of school resource officers in Stark County.
Currently in Stark County, for all agencies, we have about 60 resource officers that we collaborate. Now that's all jurisdictions, all police jurisdictions. Us alone at the Sheriff's Office, we have 16 resource officers in 6 different school districts, covering about 20 different buildings. So pretty extensive list. So.
Well, Chad, I'm going to tell you, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but yeah, I will tell you that you are pretty renowned in the school resource office area. I hear your name, you know, when I talk to folks all across the state within our community about the accomplishments you've been able to make as one of our resource officers, including your accomplishment to become a master resource officer. So can you tell me a little bit about what it means to you to be a school resource officer? You know, and you always demonstrate a high level of pride in what you do. And so talk to us a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, we're not only the boots on the ground, the officers in the school that they see every day, we're there to make connections with our children. We want to build that relationship with our kids so that they feel like we are a trusted adult in the school, so that they can come to us with information, anything, any type of information. They want to tell me about their weekend. I'm here to listen to them. We also want to be there not only for them at the school day, but we want to be there after school hours, working our own events, talking to Boy Scout troops, doing the different activities, leading explorer groups, those types of things. So
what you're saying, Chad, is that our school resource officers across the county are engaged in extracurricular activities at the schools?
Yes, every after-school extracurricular where they feel they need an additional safety measure, we're there to provide that to them.
So some of these students are getting to see and have a relationship with you that they may not even have with their own siblings at home. They're at school quite a bit, and then they sign up for extracurricular activities, whatever it may be in the school, and so they get a lot of face time with you guys.
Well, we have resource officers that were coaches. We have some that do the Girl Scout, do the Boy Scout talks. We had some that coached cheerleading. I coached football and baseball. We have a young man who coaches wrestling. So we're trying to get out there. We're trying to be a part of our community, and so the kids can see us maybe in that different light.
Well, that's great, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, and the pride that we see in our resource officers, and that's very important to us. And Joe, so what's your thoughts on having our officers in your schools?
Well, I think it's been a tremendous asset. The relationship support as a past principal, and having resources back at Perry local, just a tremendous asset. And Chad hit on the key is relationship.
Sure.
Again, we don't have resource officers in the schools. Obviously, safety and security is our #1 concern from the school side. But the networking, the communication, it's to help kids, it's to help families, it's to bridge those resource gaps. We have a lot of struggling families out there, and we don't have our officers in the school.
Sure.
To be a presence to help, to support, to be an asset. And again, I think from when we started these initiatives with officers in the schools, how it's grown and developed over the last 10 years, it's all about relationships with families.
Absolutely, and Joe, we heard Chad talk about, and you and I both know his passion for what he does, but we heard him talking about how our resource officers are engaged with the students, coaching sports, being involved in other programs. Tell me what you think the value of that is within the culture of the schools.
Well, it's absolutely critical. We've all been through school, and trusted adults, relationships, everyone struggles, and you just never know who that kid's going to reach out to. It could be a teacher, it could be a counselor, it could be the bus driver, could be the school resource officer. And I think the more we're engaged with kids and with families, the more successful we're going to be.
That's great, and I think we're trying to accomplish that goal, to be engaged, to be part of the culture of the schools. And I think as we continue to see our resource officers involved in those cultures, we see the levels of incidents that go down in our schools, and I think that's very important. Guys, I'm really big on training. We opened a training center here in Mass, and that's very important to me. The training center allows us to engage with other agencies, and Joe, before the program today, you and I talked about the other agencies, about 24 law enforcement agencies in the county, and we encourage them to engage with us in training in our center, so it's open to all law enforcement. We think that's a valuable piece to what we do here in providing safety and security in our schools. Sergeant Smith, can you give us kind of an overview of what you do each year? Like, what was your summer like to prepare for the school year this year?
Well, summer we put together a lot of trainings. We sent a lot of resource officers to train because, like you said, when you came in day one to the sheriff's office, that was your main thing was training. We need the best training officers we can, and you've really pushed that onto our resource officers too as well, which has been a great thing. This summer we sent our newer resource officers to a 40-hour basic school resource officer course. That's them getting to know, there's a difference between working midnight shift on the streets and coming into a school. It's a different, whole different environment, right? Nice, friendly environment. So they have to kind of adapt to that. So we send our new resource officers to the 40-hour basic resource officer course. We sent some resource officers to the yearly conference to be trained. Our DARE officers went to their retrainer. I got the chance to go to the School Safety Summit, where I was trained to be a trainer in school threat assessment. We put together a training in collaboration with all the fire departments across Stark County. They were all invited to what's called a rescue task force.
Sure. That's
getting our emergency medical personnel in to get the most wounded out during a major incident, mass casualty incident. We then set up a day-long, I call it an in-service day, but where we brought in a lot of our local community resources, our prosecutor's office, our youth mobile crisis, our PBIS from the Education Service Center, come in to train some of our resource officers on a yearly basis to educate them, to keep them up to speed. We then went and did a mass casualty incident assisted a drill for North Canton schools. This was a drill for their staff that we participated in, assisted North Canton.
So, Sarge, what you're saying is this summer you guys were pretty busy in training, and you're off, what's supposed to be normally your off time from school. We had training throughout the summer, up to, I think, and I think just like maybe a week or so ago, I was reading on the schedule that you guys were still training up to almost the start of the start of school. Is that
we were the
correct?
day before school started. We were training.
That's great, and we're happy to hear that because we know that that's a key part of what we do in the schools. And I think there's some value, and I'm going to ask you, Joe, what you think about this. I think there's some value in us training together with all we talked about. There's about 60 total resource officers throughout the county, and so there's some value in us training together. Let's talk about that a little bit. How do you feel about the officers being on the same page as it relates to training?
Well, I think it's critical, and I think as we look at what goes on in the state of Ohio and in our country, the threats that are out there, training, and that's our school resource officers as well as our school administrators, our school staff. Safety, security, number one on the list. And obviously when a young person, Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs, the bottom level of that, before at the top we get to learning, student success, happiness. The bottom level is food, security, safety, love, hope.
Support, yeah.
And so coming back to the training, the more we network, the more consistent we are. And you've pushed since, the last, gosh, we're going on almost a decade. But where we were 5 years ago and 10 years ago, it's night and day.
Yes.
And just want to compliment not only your agency, but also all our 24 local agencies, the work they do,
Absolutely.
boots on the ground every day. And their cooperation levels have just been unbelievable. Partnerships.
And that's great. And that's a key piece to this, that we collaborate and work together to provide this level of safety, and we continue to do that. And, we haven't talked today, but I know we talked previously about how important it is while you're working on safety plans to continue to look forward to, okay, what can we do better? What can we change this year? What can we change this week from what we've learned from something that's going on across the country to do better? And I said that's all part of the training. So with that training, I think there's also an important factor in here, Joe, with what about people we train and work with training within our school facilities? Talk about that a little bit. We work with administrators, your safety teams. How does that impact our overall safety picture?
Well, again, from the consistency at the county level with our resource officers, our safety plans are only good as if they're on paper in a book. If we're not rehearsing, practicing from chain of command, and again from our bus drivers, cooks, custodians, all the way up through the network, and just making sure that our eyes are everywhere all the time. And those plans are critical for the organizational structure, but that's why we train, review. Safety, security is on every monthly meeting we have. It's at the top, mental health, safety, security. It's just where we are.
Well, just kind of an overview of all the work that's gone into the off-school season. I'm very proud of the fact that we worked with all our partners out there, made the training available to everyone, and certainly we worked with the FBI, we worked with all of our partners, our fire and safety partners, and I think that's really a piece of what we have to be doing each and every time we train, and including our partners within the school system. So we will continue to do that because we know that that's what makes a difference. Now, Chad, you and I have had some experience with the National School Threat Assessment and Care Teams related to the United States Secret Service model.
Yes.
Just briefly, before we go into our break, tell me a little bit about that.
So, threat assessment. There was a House bill that came down, House Bill 123, that's going to require schools to have threat assessment teams in place by March of 2023. And we actually we've had the trainings up here since 2017. 2018, we brought in Dr. Dewey Cornell from the University of Virginia to train us on school threat assessment. And we've been implementing that in our schools since then. It's basically a model. They want a group a multidisciplinary group to come together, evaluate a threat, and then determine what the best way to respond to that threat is.
Great. Well, thank you, and this is probably a time that I want to take just a second to pause and emphasize again how much it takes and how many dedicated individuals are required to keep our kids safe in our schools, our residents safe in our community, and our government officials safe in the office that they hold, and so on. It takes a group of men and women who serve selflessly day in and day out. The work we do isn't always easy, but is always rewarding, and we're hiring. Please remember, we're hiring. Please watch our hiring video.
I am a school resource officer.
I am a deputy detective.
I'm Major CJ Stantz. One of my responsibilities is leading our deputies. Serving as a deputy includes a variety of duties, such as answering calls out on the road, engaging our community during events and other activities, providing security to our government facilities, working in our schools as a school resource officer, and so much more. The job is challenging, fast-paced, always changing, and truly rewarding.
Learn more on how you can join our team today and be the difference. Hey, welcome back, and today we're talking about school safety and security. You know, we were talking, Chad, a little bit about the threat assessment model used by, or adopted by us, by the United States Secret Service. And I know there's a few things, a few steps within that are pretty critical in what we do each and every day. The step that really comes to mind for me is the say something or the anonymous reporting. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about how we use that here in Stark County. And I know, Joe, all of our schools are using the Sandy Hook Say Something model or another model of anonymous reporting. So I think that's a pretty critical step in what we do.
Absolutely. So the Say Something anonymous reporting system, it's a Sandy Hook offshoot. It is basically kids can get onto an app, a phone app, type in what type of emergency they're having, whether they're feeling suicidal, whether they're having issues at home, whether they're as a student at the school with something they shouldn't have. They can put that online and it goes directly to Miami, where there's a call center. That call center determines whether it is a life-threatening issue or a non-life-threatening issue, whether it's a school-related issue. And they divvy those out. So they'll send it to us if it's a life-threatening situation, as well as the school administration at the building. Or if it's not, if it's more of a school issue, they'll send it to the school administration so they can follow up with it the next day.
Great. And so they're separated out.
Yep.
Life-threatening issues, those are addressed immediately by local law enforcement along with the school
Correct.
Administration. And Joe, I know when we first started that, we were a little bit overwhelmed with the calls we got and the notifications we got, but I think our schools are onto that pretty well now. When did we start doing that here in Stark County?
So Sheriff, we started that approximately 2018.
Wow.
So
that's great.
So we're going into our fifth year, fifth year.
That's fantastic. And we are having people that are reporting things. Now we get things like smoking in the bathroom or vaping in the bathroom, but we also get things that are certainly of life safety issues, and those are the things that certainly we certainly want to address immediately. And I think part of this process is working with the school administration along with our school resource officers to address these issues, right? Isn't that how it works? I mean,
yeah, so we'll get the call, but we need the addresses from the school of where these kids live at. So we're constantly in connection with our school administration. I think I was on the phone last night until about 10:30 last night, working through a problem and getting an address so that we could follow up,
Sure.
both our deputies as well as the school officials.
Great. And so a little bit of a change from an administrative standpoint, that your folks are communicating with us all hours of the night, quite frankly, related to things that are of a safety issue to our students. And so I think that's a huge accomplishment for us right here in Stark County. And I know, Joe, wasn't there some legislative change to make this available all across the state? How's this work?
So it was mandated by our General Assembly that all schools have an anonymous reporting system last year. And again, we've been ahead of the curve. And I think as we reflect the schools administrators, this anonymous reporting system has been one of the most critical aspects we've had threat assessment from the standpoint of, so as a lot of times when our kids are struggling or they know something that isn't right, it gives them the avenue to report it, because in a lot of times they're kids, they don't want to talk to an adult.
Right.
this gives them that avenue. We've got just some great feedback from it.
So they got somebody trusted that they can reach out to.
We've helped prevent a lot of issues in the school, as well as help kids who are struggling.
I think that's excellent. We applaud the schools for making that available, and certainly for everybody for making that a priority in what we do. You know, I will tell you, school safety and security, we have a school safety and security task force here in the county that Joe and I both kind of co-chair, and we've had this for almost 5 years now. I think we've had this group that stood up. I think there's been a lot of great things that have come out as a result of the task force. We usually meet on a regular basis, and you know, as we navigate through some of these safety issues. Joe, what do you think the value is to your superintendents in participating in that task force?
Well, it's networking, it's learning. I mean, we have the FBI at the table, State Highway Patrol, your office, local law enforcement, Homeland Security representatives. So the benefit ultimately is school security and safety is evolving and changing every day. And the threats are out there. So the greater link and network that we have and the more communication we have, it keeps us, I don't want to say we're ever out in front of it or ahead of it, but it keeps us as current as possible on how to best serve our families and our kids. Yeah,
and I will tell you, one of the values that there's a number of values that I could point to as it relates to the safety task force. One of the things that I find as a value is being able to have that networking ability with the superintendents and talk and hear from them their concerns and talk about things that are best practices, vet safety initiatives through them, and talk through how things work and how things don't work. Sometimes, you know, when you're talking about school safety and security, it's always a moving organism. We're always changing, thinking about different things we can do, and certainly a certain amount of that is somewhat kept behind the scenes because we don't want to give all the things we're doing out to the public for the safety and security of our students. But I think that probably one of the most effective parts of, I should say, not efficient, effective pieces of the task force is having the ability to engage with your superintendents, hearing directly from them what their challenges are. And we really enjoy that opportunity, and we're going to continue that. You know, I know we talked a little bit about training, and I want to kind of segue back to that a little bit. We have a simulator that we use for training, and I know our school resource officers, you trained with that this year. You train with that frequently throughout the year. Let's talk a little bit about the value of our simulator that we use.
All right. So the Milo simulator, it's a for lack of a better term, a large game setup. So it's a large screen, but we're actually using a real pistol that gives us the real action of a gun. It has a laser sight at the end of it, and we're able to go through different situations, whether that be a mass incident or that be a de-escalation incident. I believe there's 800 or 900 incidents loaded into this thing.
Wow.
Because it's hard to simulate real life shooting events, de-escalation events. This is the next best thing.
Well, I have heard that we have used this even for school administrators, school service workers, bus drivers can use this to help in de-escalating situations, maybe some type of conflict that they encounter. And so how effective is that when we're dealing with people that may encounter you're at a bus stop, a couple parents come and there's some type of conflict. How effective is that, and how important is that for our folks that are out there trying to do their job?
Well, it's hard to replicate a real life situation, but this does the next best thing. One of the other benefits, I believe when we did the tour of the training center, we actually got some people the chance to use the Milo simulator. I think we brought in a prosecutor, a judge, and they got to actually feel what it feels like, because it puts you under a little pressure there.
Sure.
You know, your heart rate starts going up, you start getting narrow-sighted. They got to actually feel what it's like without being in a real incident. Yeah. And that can translate into just that education piece, that knowledge of having gone through that, as what an officer is feeling like when they're on the scene.
That's fantastic, and we make that available to our law enforcement folks in the county, and additionally our school resource officers, safety teams, faculty members, that anybody that you, Joe, or a superintendent feels that they'd like to put through that type of training, we make that available right here in our training center in Massillon. You know, I want to ask you, you know, you talked a lot about training today, but what is it, how do you keep that network going with your school resource officers? What do you guys do? Now the school year started,
Sure.
We're back in school. How do you guys stay connected, guys and gals stay connected?
So first of all, we have to create a contact list, and we keep that contact list. We share it out to the other resource officers, so the other resource officers know how to get a hold of one another. Next thing we do is we invite, we try to host monthly meetings, and we try and do that at different school buildings, because we want to rotate around to different school buildings and see what maybe a safety feature at one school building has that might be a good idea that we can bring back to our home school district. Then we try and, at those meetings, we try and bring in different speakers for different community resources that we might need or have access to that other resource officers might not know about. And it's, like I said, it's all about networking. It's all about creating that connection with our resource officers, so we're all on the same page, we're all doing the same job of keeping our kids safe.
And I think it's part of the collaboration with our schools, with our superintendents, that allow us to go to the different school districts and to be able to do that networking and include them in that process that helps contribute to safer schools in Stark County. I think one of the things that I would be remiss in if I didn't mention is the importance of, we need help from the community, right? We can't do this alone.
Right.
And so we need help from the community, and the importance of people making sure that their firearms are secured. One of the things we've learned through this process is, if a school has an incident where a gun comes into school, it's always the case of somebody had access. A student had access to a firearm. So we're reminding you, our listeners, please, please, please make sure your firearms are secured and keep them safe from young children or children who might otherwise pick up the gun and not know how to handle the gun properly. And you know, with that, I think that's an important message. I think it's important to our schools. It's important to our law enforcement partners. Hey, I want to thank you guys for coming on today. It's been great talking to you about school safety. You know, I'm passionate about, as you are, Joe, and certainly we understand your passion, Sarge, about school safety, and I can't thank you enough for being here with us today.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks, Sheriff.
To our guest today, Stark County Education Service Center Joe Chaddok and Stark County Sheriff's Office School Resource Officer and Supervisor Sergeant Chad Smith, thank you for a great conversation, all the information you were able to share with us. And to the members of our community, thank you for tuning in today. After all, we all have a hand in keeping Stark County safe.